Everybody, thanks for tuning in to All Things Division III Soccer with Simple Coach and Jackie. I am Simple Coach. You guessed it, there she is. That's Jackie. She just woke up. She's really foggy in the mornings now. It's got a little bit of dementia. Doggy dementia, I guess, is a thing. And yeah, she's aging quick, so it's always a blessing to have her around. Anyhow, so do appreciate you tuning in. I'll just say it out at the beginning. Thank you for all the support. Patreon members, you guys rock. Thank you very much. So today I wanted to do and talk about rankings. So, about a month ago, it's probably earlier than that because I think it's all automated, right? The Massey rankings, that is, it's just basically a statistical analysis of each team based on certain criteria, comes up with its 2024 rankings. And by and large, it's pretty much a snapshot of the previous year, right? That where it ended, and it just ranks them. I think the NCAA also just sort of takes what the season-ending ranking is and says this is our first ranking for 2024. And I kind of, I don't want to say have problems with that, but to me that's not real. It's not a real ranking. So I am Simple Coach. So I decided that I was going to use my YouTube influencing and try to come up with a top 25 ranking based on doing some research, looking at the teams who I think merits to be number one, and so on and so forth. So try to look for some up-and-comers as well. Now, this is a top 25. I do a top 25 because the fan poll on the D3 boards asks for top 25, so I think I just stuck with it, but it could easily be a top 20. But, unfortunately, that leaves a bunch of teams out, and this is where it gets tricky, right? There's a number of teams that you could say, oh, at least in my book, deserve to be ranked, and that's perfectly fine, but just for whatever the criteria. And just to name a few, 11-5-2 Christopher Newport, I think could have an exciting season. Wisconsin Platteville at 15-3-4, fantastic season last year. Do they have the momentum to carry that forward? Down in Tejas, St. Thomas, Texas Lutheran, right? These are great programs. One that I think bubbled to the top 25s last year, had a great season. Lynchburg, another one. McAllister, Emory really hit its stride last year in the UAA and in the NCAA's. You got the always the ones that are always there, the Battling Bishops of Ohio Wesleyan. John Carroll, who I thought last year didn't have seemingly the greatest of seasons, but I think they're always knocking on the door I think one of these times will go pretty far. And same with Otterbein. My alma mater last year, University of Mount Union, having a spectacular season. And then finally you look at somebody like University of the Redlands, right? Like can really there's a lot coming out of the West and the South, and I think they're one of the teams that is always a possibility. But like I said, I can only pick 25, so that's what I did. So with that, and with Jackie finding a comfortable spot on the chair and dozing back off again, I am going to, here's the top 25. All right, so starting with number 25. SUNY Oneonta. Last year they were at 15-4-3. They lost in the SUNYAC finals to Cortland State, and then they fell to Washington and Lee in the second rounds of the NCAA's. But and this year, keep in mind, they lose their senior captain goalkeeper, Nate Hanna, who is all regional selection, along with John Bernardi and Ian Zangaro. I think they lost them to graduation. But they do have a deep roster. So I think there's some challenges in seeing if they can't replace those players. But, this could be, they could definitely have a pretty good a pretty good next year, or this year, sorry, 2024. So at 24, 13, 4, and 2, Trinity in Tejas. Senior heavy team. I will say the one player that I think is doing it for me that I think could have a banger of a year is Michael Meese. Spent his sophomore year, I think for the most part injured. Came back last year, maybe had some cobwebs trying to figure that out, and he still had an excellent season. But I think this is the year that he could set the SCAC on fire and really help the team advance in the NCAAs. So 24 Trinity. Next up, this is one I sort of debated, and which is probably a shocker for many of you who've been following me the last couple of years. But at 23, 21-1. The team I think plays the best soccer in Division III, Messiah. The biggest issue for me is, I'll just say, they're losing Player of the Year or lost Player of the Year Matt McDonald and defender Jake Glenn Coop. They still have an outstanding roster, and they fully are reloading. And this may be the year that Josh Bradiger really steps into the leadership void I think that's being created. But what surprised me was against Ohio Northern was how reliant they were on Matt McDonald in the attack, not just for goals, but just for how he can unbalance teams and speed and all that. So I would need to see them figuring out ways to deal with that. So at 22, Case Western Reserve, 10-3-4. They placed third in the UAA. In 2023, made it to the second round in the NCAAs and fell in PKs to Cortland State. This year, they got a stacked veteran team. Coach Poe has a team that's going to be tough to score on, and I think they're going to have a well-balanced attack. But I do think their goal production is where the question marks for me come in. I think last year they were like 25 goals for, 25 goals against, and I think they need to amp that up a little bit on the plus side. So at 21, at 16-3-1, they were the Cinderella story of Division III last year. They had an outstanding season. They lost to eventual champs St. Olaf in the second round of the NCAAs. Carlton. They 16-3-1. They lose a big senior class to graduation, but they return their basically three leading scorers: Ben Pennell, Briggs Prame, and Owen Flanagan. So I think that's going to be this could be a year for them. At 20, the Centennial Conference champions, Johns Hopkins, at 13-5-4, lost to Middlebury after getting through Babson. This is a team that already has a veteran squad, but it's just reloading, and they're adding some additional D1 transfers. I still think they're the team to beat. I still think they play some great soccer. And I think time will tell if this senior class, graduate class, is enough to get them further in the NCAAs. At 19, they lose a lot of talent to graduation, but I'm not one to pass them up just because Coach Roy Dunshee always seems to has a team that is able to compete. 15-3-5, Washington College. They were overlooked much of last year by me. Maybe everybody else saw them. I just kind of overlooked them. But they made it to the semifinals of the NCAA, and they lost to St. Olaf in the semis. So they do lose a lot, but I think they're going to be ready to compete. Okay, at number 18, 15-4-3. I thought they were the surprise. They were a surprise to me last year. Occidental. I thought they were playing some really good soccer in LA, and they ended up being the SCIAC champs. They ended up getting to the Sweet 16, losing to Amherst 1-0 in a game that I thought they could have won, or maybe even should have. I think they could be a surprise for 2024. They only lose 5 to graduation. Their leading scorers, Andrew Nodder and Uri Diane, returned for their senior year. So they got the goal production there. It's just a matter, can they deliver? At number 17, 14-4-3, the Jumbos of Tufts University. I obviously I expect them to make a run for the NESCAC. They're one of the elites in the conference, and I think in the tournament. I think they have a mature roster. I'm a big fan of Danny Yanez, and I think he's really going to have to lead this team. I thought last year they came up short in that final third, connecting. So I think that's going to be critical if they're going to find success this year. At 16, they were 18-2-2 last year. They were a shootout away from getting through Chicago, but they still had an outstanding year. Calvin, my concerns, they lose Oliver Akintade and leading scorer midfielder Chris Shao to graduation. So I think for veteran coach Souders, I think it might be a little bit of a test for him, but I do, they rinse and repeat, right, is how their seasons go. So at 15, after an incredible season last year, I think they could have made it to the final if they didn't come across Amherst in the NCAA's. 15-2-4 Middlebury. Yeah, they are low considering how good. I considered these to be higher, but they lose their captains Jordan St. Louis and Ben Powers, and so I wouldn't necessarily call it a rebuilding year because I do think they have a pretty deep roster, but I think there are definitely some open questions. Okay, at 14, at 13-5-2 from last year, 90 minutes of hell all season long. Wisconsin Eau Claire. I mean, how do you compete against that? Honestly, I fully expect them to match or better their 13-5-2 record from last year. Strong squad, play pretty direct, but they're super effective. So at 13, I think I had them as probably in this range in mid-table. I think I had them higher, maybe at third last year at one point. North Central had a great run during the year. They did drop in the first round against 90 Minutes of Hell, Wisconsin Eau Claire. So they're going to have a really experienced squad in 2024. So with a strong senior class, so I fully expect them to compete for the CCIW title and maybe this year not get tripped up out of the gate in the tournament. At 12, 15-6-2, Coach Mateka, bicycle kick fame in the OAC title, I think. Ohio Northern, the Polar Bears. They beat Messiah last year, 1-0 in the NCAA tournament, and it was a great season. And they had one of, if not the toughest schedule in Division III. Now, I am going to say beating Messiah in 2023 was not a fluke. And if there is going to be a year for Ohio Northern, it's this year. They have a large veteran class that I think is going to be pivotal, barring anything. And I think they will make a run at the end. OACs make it hard for everybody else. I think they're the ones to chase this year. At number 11, the Red Dragons, 17-3-2 of Cortland State. They're one of the two public schools that I've been saying they have the talent. They just need maybe an extra piece, or they need to put something together to win a national championship. I put them there. But my issue this year, they lost both of their captains and a couple of other key players to graduation. Now, they're in a great spot because I think they're bringing in some transfers, which Cortland State it gives them that luxury to be able to do that, and I think they're bringing in a pretty decent freshman class. So I think they will be back in 2024. So this is one that's going to maybe shock because you should give them all the rights of the number one spot. But 21-3-2 St. Olaf, yeah, they deserve the national title without a doubt. But for 2024, my biggest question marks for them is that they are losing Victor Gallman and Hakeem Morgan, two critical pieces of the success last year. They're trying at their hands at their feet at Division I in their COVID year, whatever, their final year. The two of them account for 26 goals. And so, to my mind, St. Olaf is starting from a deficit of 26 goals. And so they have to figure out a way to make that up. At number 9, 15-3-3, Scott Palguda's program out at Colorado College. Monster season last year. They lost in PKs to Washington and Lee in the Elite Eight. They were playing great soccer, really tough to beat at home. Maybe it's the altitude. But they only graduate 3 players, so the core of their team should be returning. The question is, and again, some picking these teams year in and year out, sometimes there's a lot of, hey, they did well this season, and the next season they drop. So I'm curious about Colorado College. Can it keep up the momentum this year? So now the other of my 2 public schools that I think can win a national title, and maybe this is the year, at number 8, Montclair State. I had them as high as 11th last year, I think. So their player of the year and Division III leading scorer, Amir Lukovic, is returning for his senior year. I think they have their core returns, and so if he repeats his goal production, I think they win the NJAC and they go deep in the tournament. So I'll be watching. At number 7, they were semifinalists last year in the tournament. They seemed to be off to a rough start. They seemed slow, but they picked up some momentum and literally grew as the season went on. And 16-5-4, the Generals of Washington and Lee. I think they could have another great year. I'm just going to say the big caveat, which everyone is asking, is Coach Singleton is now the head women's coach at Goucher, and I think we're just going to wait to see what the reaction is of the squad to new coach Lumumba Shabazz, who was formerly at Kalamazoo. That, to me, is the biggest question mark. At number 6, they're always in it to win it. But Dan Wagner, the Diplomats of Franklin and Marshall at 14-3-3. They tend to lock and load, but this year they could have a pretty significant 2024. Strong returning squad. And this could be another one of where it's like, man, if it's not this year, I'm not sure, when do they get to this strength again? So number 5 at 16-5, Kenyon College. So I thought last year was a little bit of a transition. If you remember, Coach Travis Wall literally showed up in Gambier like 2 weeks before preseason, and I think he got the Lords, excuse me, the Owls. I think they started to get improve as the season went on. I think they need a little bit more consistently in big games, but I definitely think they have the potential to be a national powerhouse. So I think with this year, this might be the year that they just hit on all cylinders, because I do think they have the talent and the ambition, and they're bringing in some a pretty good freshman class that I think is going to be, it could see them make it to the Final Four. I know, bold, huh? Ooh. Okay, so as much as they disappointed me last year behavior-wise in the NCAA's, they're definitely a squad that you have to reckon with. 18-3-3, the Monmouths of Amherst College. My issues are they're losing their big time winger Ada Elkoragaye. I can never say that. Jeez. And their goalkeeper Max Landa. Now, of the two, I think Ada Elkoragaye, it was the biggest loss. Right, he was really a destabilizing force. Really did create a lot of energy. I just wonder if they can replicate that. And their goalkeeper is a graduating senior, so a lot of experience back there. So, but I will just say, Amherst being Amherst, they reload, and they'll be as competitive as ever. So I don't expect them to have a down year or anything like that. I just expect them to keep rolling. Which leads me to number 3, another NESCAC. I think they were playing the best soccer in the NESCAC last year. I think they just came up short to be the Cinderella postseason team, and that's because they lost to Washington College, who was tended to be a little bit of a spoiler. The Cannels of Connecticut College, 14-2-5. They won the national championship. Their following year was kind of a mess. They didn't play well. They just couldn't get it going. And then last year, like I said, everything seemed back on track. And so I think they are hungry, and I expect them to be even better this year with a pretty good returning squad. Okay, so at number 2, this took me a while to get to number 2, geez, let alone number 10, like, right. 12-3-5, the Maroons of the University of Chicago. 2022 national champions last year, never seemed to get in a groove, and it could have been new coach, what have you. And they lost the 2 best center backs ever in Division 3, not ever, but who knows, but in the last few years. They just never really got into the groove, and they still remained a top contender all year. So I think this year, second-year head coach Philip Croft has a veteran team, and I expect them to sort of come out pretty strong and to stay there. And so I'm going to call it. I think they can compete for the national championship again. I think they're that talented. Which leads me to number 1. Who do I think has what it takes? And I'm going to say, they were a game away, again, losing to Washington College to get to the Final Four. 1 game away. They were 18-2-2. The University of Mary Washington is my number 1 pick for the 2024 preseason poll. Like I mentioned, they were a game away in the Final Four. But you look at their roster, they are loaded. They have 7 juniors, 9 seniors, and 10 grad students this year. So it is a case of, if it is not this year, I am not sure the stars align for them again. I just don't see it. So So yeah, University of Mary Washington, my number one pick for the 2024 preseason poll. All right, so that covers it. Just so you know, I'm already working on the women's top 25. I'll be hopefully in the next week or so. Same thing, it's just a lot of research that I'm trying to do, make it somewhat intelligent. I'm not sure I did that here, but it was my best stab. If you have any, if you agree, disagree, compliments, concerns, all that stuff, comment down below, shoot me an email. Love to get your feedback. I will post this as well as the rankings on d3soccer.fans, so you'll be able to take a look with all my notes, and hopefully, you maybe at least think about it a little bit differently and see what you look at in the new year. But in the meantime, I just want to thank you. Thanks again for all the support. Get a lot of emails. Really do appreciate it. There's been a lot of work going on. I think, between the website and the videos. So I'm trying to get back into the groove again, especially as the season ramps up. So anything you want to see here, by all means, let me know. Would love to. I'll take suggestions for topics. But in the meantime, I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful summer, and I look forward to starting up here, the season starting up in the next couple weeks with most teams returning, right, for preseason. So I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going to go for preseason. A lot of schools calling me like, hey, man, you're just the bomb, so we want you. But, I'm just trying to figure out who has the best to offer. Although the academics is killing me right now. Anyhow, hope you have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.